Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. This is match day, and with us today is, I'm Vince, and we have Ian Barker, my boss, and he's in the middle. And to the right, we have, on my screen anyway, we have Russell Earnshaw, otherwise known as Rusty, and he's with the Magic Academy, and I'll have him talk a little bit about that. But his forte is primarily gamification, and he travels all over the world. Gives presentations to national federations and works with rugby groups, cricket groups, football, soccer groups, you name it. I met Rusty rather briefly when we were both through the Massachusetts Youth Soccer Workshop. I was in and out. He got to stay overnight. I stayed for like 3 hours and then I flew out of there. But anyway, I was really interested in what you were doing. And from all my research and learning about you, you're definitely one of the best in this field of gamification. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. And you're in England, and I know it's about dinner time, so we'll try not to keep you too long. So thank you for being.
I was going to say, yeah, thanks for having me. Hope everyone's well and safe over there as well. It's probably similar situation to us, really. Strange times for coaches.
Yes. Yeah. How did you get interested in this whole method, right, of gamification? So what started it? What sparked you?
Yeah, look, and I would recommend some people. I'm definitely standing on the shoulders of a giant, a lady called Amy Price. Actually, when you look at some of the stuff we talk about today, you'll go, I do bits of that. We all will in our coaching kind of naturally. Probably how she helped me was she kind of condensed it down to some principles that I would be thinking about. I've done a couple of pods with her, so they've been really useful for me to kind of go back and forth, because she's very academic and she's very pure on gamification. I would be much more, it's based upon the context you're in.
Okay, good. And then, so I mean, like yesterday you worked with the Arsenal, was it the youth?
No, I did a thing for the Arsenal coaches, the under-23s down. I've got a bit of stuff with Rangers coming up, so with Mike Beale, first team coach, we're going to do a bit of a Q&A around this and other stuff. We've got some cool questions like, how do you know your half times are effective? What would the players say about your coaching cohesion? And we'll do a bit of gamification stuff. So yeah, so I've tried this in lots of sports. My background is rugby. I'm terrible at football, but it's definitely having impact in football. And we were just chatting there, similarly with cricket. So a bit of stuff with the under-19s cricket, with the GB hockey. So I think this will be really normal in a few years in terms of learning environments in the classroom, on the pitch. I think we'll be going, well, this is just how we do stuff now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm fascinated by it. I saw one of our instructors, Neil Hole. He's also English, and he did a presentation for us on gamification at one of our conventions one time, and it really just drew me in, and it was very well done. And for me, it makes a lot of sense for motivational purposes. And there's a lot of little like social, pieces to it that I think, if done right, it can really be impactful. So, and there is a method to it. And I know a lot of schools are using it. A lot of teachers are using it, and for curriculum development, they use gamification for curriculum development and so on. So, tell us a little bit about the Magic Academy. It looks like, from what I read and researched, it's more on more gamification for businesses, right? For companies.
Yeah, look, it's probably bits of everything, really. So about 18 months ago, me and John Fletcher kind of going alone, and we work with lots of sports, as I said, football, cricket, hockey, netball, lacrosse, the whole shebang, bits of stuff for business, do a bit of work with Google, other stuff as well. I've probably got the dream job, I'm not going to lie. Because you get to pick stuff from other people. So I've just literally before this just did a webinar with England Handball, where we've kind of provoked them previously. I've kind of had a backwards and forwards, like we're going to do around a session that someone had tried. Well, I wrote loads of notes on stuff he'd done that I'd never thought of, because his kid said, well, why don't we introduce this kind of jeopardy into the game where if this happens, we can steal all their points. So then we have this real decision making. I'm like, why have I never thought of that? He was like, the kids thought of it. So when you spoke about, self-determination theory, lots of stuff around choice in this stuff, lots of, the principles would be aligned with metacognition, getting people to think, getting people to problem solve. So people might say, oh, this is kind of, it's fun, it's engaging. I think it's also performance. So the best feedback I've probably had, the stuff that's resonated the most with me, was I did it with some England Sevens players, and they said, Rusty, all of our training should look like this. So I don't think it's the kids. I think you can vary it from context to context, and you would just vary your language, as an example, as you would as a coach anyway.
Yeah. So just like, gamification, like just like a thumbnail, like what would you say? Like what's it mean or to do?
Yeah, look, I think and maybe imagine all the coaches on here, if you play on games, why, if you're a gamer or if you've got a kid, my 15-year-old son, there's a reason why. And there's a reason why he's working really hard and he wants to get better. And so the stuff is things like missions. So they own the mission. Often as coaches, we own the mission. Levels. So once again, I see lots of coaching where we start the session on level 0, we maybe get to 9, and then we start again on 0. That's actually quite boring, isn't it, really? But why wouldn't we go, well, let's master 8 and then maybe go back to 9 and 10. So I think there's a lot of stuff here around mastery. I would, and I know you've tried it, I would look at how you can gamify blocked practice. So people understand that they're moving through levels, they're progressing. Third thing is superpowers. So in computer games, if you're behind on Mario, my wife has told me, because she often is when she plays my kids, something lands on you and makes you go quicker. So it allows you to access the game. If you're constantly in 12th position, then you lose interest. If you're constantly at the start and beating everyone by a mile, then I think you get a banana, and it kind of allows. So it works out the challenge point for you. So one of my favorite superpowers, a group of kids picked for a girl. They said, this girl, new to rugby, she's starting to do this stuff really well. Let's introduce a superpower that would help her do it even more. Oh my God, like we're doing empathy as well. Fourth thing, probably the biggest change for me, is pausing. If you looked at any of my sessions from more than 12 months ago, I would be doing most of the pausing. So coaches, have a think about how often you pause versus they pause. 12 months ago for Rusty, 100% them pausing, 100% me, 0% them. It's probably 80 them, 20 me now. And last thing is saving progress. So at what point do you bank your points? So we chatted about, like, could you play a football game where you score at one end, and then if you turn quickly and score at the other end, it's worth 3 points, but you lose your 1 point. So you have to make a quick decision on the pictures in front of you. So quickly on this slide, that's the look. I don't want to teach people to suck eggs. Top left, there's some practice stuff we can play around with. I would think about what you do and why. I'm definitely up more in the top right now, tactical warfare, metacognition. I'm not saying any of them are right or wrong. What I'm saying is there's trade-offs. So block practice, you get lots of goes. I would always want decision-making in it. Metacognition, you get to do lots of thinking, and you also practice off the ball and tactical problem solving. The other thing, the other two slides are just, so happy to share these. This bottom one on the right was my session in when I was over there in Boston, and that was the 2 levels. And so I kind of co-created it with the players. What was a goal worth? So one of them, a goal was worth 2, but a sweaty, which is a tap in FIFA, was worth 5 points, because I wanted them to get to think about, could we create easy goals? And then if they got the ball back in the opposition half, they got 2 points. So they were playing a high press without me coaching it. The last thing, so the card at the top was co-coaching. So because there was a lot of coaches in the room, and you coached there as well, it was quite challenging. I wanted to engage them. So I gave them the option of who wants to co-coach with me, and I picked stuff that I wasn't that good at. So I'm not that good at, when a game's going on, having some individual skills moments. So there was a skills master and there was a head of happiness. That session was the first time the kids ever said, can we be the co-coaches, Rusty? Which kind of, I had to have a minute to think. And then we did the session for 20 minutes. And the kid who picked the head of happiness, he was on a secret mission. So I said, as long as you don't show anyone what your card is. So his job, and he was one of the best players, was to catch other people doing something well and high five them or fist pump them or whatever it is. And at the end of 20 minutes, I stopped and I said, cool, tell me, what are your experiences? What's been your best bit? All of the best bits were with that kid. They weren't with me. So there's me thinking I'm killing this session. This is pretty cool. But actually, the impact of peer to peer or those individual coaching interactions. So, what I would say with this for me is really good practice design, gamification, and we'll go into yours now, allows me to coach more. So I can have more individual interactions, which is ultimately where the value is. When you ask kids, and here's a question for coaches to think about, just ask the kids, how can we as coaches help you today? And the answers I generally get are don't stop the game, individual interactions, catches doing stuff well. And if you're a goalkeeper, you probably ask the outfield coaches to come and hang with you a bit more than they currently do.
Yeah. No, Coach Barker, this is fascinating. I mean, I've tried a couple of times to do some of these. I just have to do it more and more, and I've learned that you have to layer, you call it scaffolding. You have to layer in pieces. You can't give them everything all at once. And so, but Coach Barker, do you have any questions or?
Yeah, it's interesting listening to Rusty talk, because I think sometimes more traditional coaches feel like they're giving up control. I think the way you described that last kid, Rusty, that was the head of happiness and had the secret mission. What we're actually doing is what I think those of us that are experienced and have tried to work out how to enjoy our sessions more is we're facilitating the environment. So we are still very, very integral to the environment, but we're being much more self-confident in turning the sessions back over to the athletes. So for me, the takeaway there was that notion of we continue to be integral to the learning environment, but we just abdicate almost some of our responsibilities. So I really like that concept.
Yeah, I just to add on to that, and obviously I was lucky enough to watch Vince coach as well, and I would say that's exactly what he was doing. And one of the strongest reasons, so maybe have a look at Lara Mossman. She's in Australia. She's done a lot of work on kind of flavors of motivation. The number one behavior for coaches to dial up around motivation is choice. But it might not be me saying to my daughter, what time do you want to go to bed? 3 a.m. It might be me going, do you want to go to bed now or in 20 minutes? So she has choice. The second thing that you spoke about is scaffolding. This challenged my coaching to probably scaffold things more like huddles. The reality is now that when they pause and go, Rusty, can we have a huddle? They'll have an individual team huddle. And because there's a problem, because both teams don't have the same scoring system and they're trying to work out how to put their game plan on them and stop their game plan. And what is their game plan, which, by the way, is the game. So every time you play, you don't know everything about the opposition. Then I've had to learn to scaffold things like huddles. So I might just, go, sorry, what was the most important thing in that huddle? Or we might agree beforehand, what would a good huddle look like? Or we would all listen if someone spoke. And probably the last thing, and it's a really great point from you, Vince. So I'm really guilty often of trying to put everything in, often because I'm doing coach development and you want to give people some options. If I was doing this, and I was starting out as a coach, will you tell me, Vince, how did you feel the first time you did it?
I felt like I wasn't organized. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't methodical. I had in my mind what I wanted to do, but I have to learn how to layer it, in little bits and pieces. That's
nice.
That's when I went.
And I think you're quite an experienced coach and you've coached in lots of environments. So this is a little bit like I talk about singing karaoke. So this is like, oh my days, I'm going to have to sing and this is not what I'm used to. And so I think that the reality for coaches is you've got to think about which song you want to sing. And that might not be you might not go straight into Pavarotti. You might start off with a bit of MC Hammer and work your way up to Pavarotti. So I think it's also useful for coaches to frame that in advance and go, look, I'm going to try some new stuff today. Or maybe in the week, catch a couple of players and go, look, are there any video games you guys are doing? Fortnite, oh, cool. What's the stuff you like? Oh, well, we like the stuff around lives. Oh, could we play this game? Do you think we could introduce lives into rugby or football? So I think there's some prior work. And this, these cards for me, so me writing stuff on whiteboards is prior work. The other ones around noticing were really to point the coaches who were observing to look at some stuff like where I was standing, what was happening off the ball, where were players scanning, all that. So it's a really good point from you. I would be, just try it little bits at a time.
Yeah. So thank you. This has been really good. So we talked about this in our pre-call yesterday. So I created an activity. I'll share it with everybody. It's just an activity. I'll explain it best I can. So you got multiple grids. I'll try and turn my whiteboard on. I'll try and do this here, boss.
Once you've turned it on, hit the line on the top left, the horizontal line, and that'll give you a straighter pointer.
Okay. Perfect. So we've got 3 grids, 2, 3. They play 3v3 in the grid, and the idea is that they can dribble or pass to a player running beyond the line, right, to kind of score. If they do, then what happens next is, and I'm going to try and change to a pencil. So let's say, for example, we're looking at this grid right here. So this player here dribbled across the line. So the game stops for a second. And I just call this whole thing tug of war. So the game stops, and the team that won, so the red team won, these 2 cones stay where they are, but then now they rest, and then they pick up these 2 cones. This is like a rest. And then they place them down here. So it's almost like it's a total tug of war going on both sides, right? So you got the blues defending this side, you got the reds defending this side, but they're in 3s on each little field. So that's kind of the idea. And the idea is that, you can add in some things. And that's why I thought this could be an idea for the gamification piece. So how can you do this like a little differently? So Coach Barker, I hope that makes sense, right? So this activity, it's actually one that, like, if I were to go back into a club environment and I had a whole field, I would do something like this almost right out of the gate, just because it's smaller numbers. So we got some physical distancing maybe going on, to be safe, but also you can work on some, getting them back in shape a little bit, getting a lot of technical touches, a lot of, tactical decisions as well. So Rusty, so we talked about some ideas. How could you gamify this, or how could you, what layers could you add in?
And I love it. And I think it's a great way to start a session. And obviously as kids arrive at different times, they might join a game type thing. You might do it that way. So I'm thinking about this. So how could you have levels? So if you won and you moved the oppositions, you moved the cones to move, so your scoring line was further down the line, then they might have to be narrower. So it could get progressively harder. Another thing I thought about was, could you scaffold in pauses? So the other thing I said to you is, and I do this a lot, is, so essentially you've got 3 games there, but you could say, well, it's Reds against Blues. We're going to play for 15 minutes. And at the end of 15 minutes, in order to win the game, all 3 of your teams need to have their line on the correct side of the halfway. So all 3 of your teams need to be winning. Now, you might say they have to be winning by 2 places. So you can choose that, really. Then what we would get is like people moving between games. So if I'd moved mine 3, I might go onto another pitch where my team are on -1 and try and help them. So we might go 4v3. Now, that's probably where I would scaffold in pauses and go, and each team's allowed 2 pauses. So you can pause, because actually the reality of that is you might want to pause and go, hang on a second. Yeah, Vince, you come over onto this pitch. Right, cool. Let's move. Right, pause. Let's play. So they start to think tactically. The other thing we could do, so think about a superpower. You might have a player that is new to your game. So they've just rocked up, and you might give them a slightly different color bib, and that player might have the superpower that they can't be tackled. Or if they score, if someone passes the ball to them and they score, then you move the cones forward too. So, and there's a couple of things here. So if you tell everyone, it becomes hard for that player. If it's a secret mission, then that player will have some success to start with, which will then gradually wane away. So the beauty of secret missions and not telling everyone everything is that people can have success. So if I said to you, Vince, your goal is to get 3 nutmegs in training today, you'd probably get 1 or 2 quite quickly. But then if I then told everyone, Vince is trying to get nutmegs, it's going to become really hard for you. So I've essentially set levels for you. The last thing that we kind of chatted about, I thought it would be interesting, would be, so save progress. You might go, so you might decide we want to bank our line here, or you might risk it and play again. So you could introduce a thing in this game where if you then don't achieve back to back, then you go back to halfway. So you go, actually, we're going to bank it here and we're going to let them have a go. So all of this is really to get them thinking. Now, clearly they'll be getting lots of touches. And I mean, I just was on with England handball and I just asked the national coaches on, I said, how many really good tactical problem solvers have we got in England handball? And he kind of laughed and said, I think you know the answer. It wasn't many. And the reality is, and because none of us have experienced this, so I'm 45 and I never took part, and I played professional sport, I never took part in a training session where Vince had something that I didn't know about, or the opposition played a different way. And yet every weekend we played a game, we assumed they weren't talking about us in the week and practicing. So this is where the tactical problem solving comes in for me. So I think you might not add all of that, but you could definitely add levels. You could make it gradually harder. You could add the pauses. And I think I would just, everyone who's listening, you would know your players really well. So you would be able to do that. Probably my last thing on the superpowers. The kids always choose better superpowers than I would have ever imagined.
Yep. No, it's interesting because Ian, I don't think it's Ian Barker. It might be Ian from Bainbridge.
Yeah.
So he thinks that it's too structured to introduce gamification, which is fine. I think for me, it's what you just mentioned, right? How you can layer in those pieces, superpowers and pauses, and you can even take a structured piece like this and gamify it.
I mean, it depends what you mean by structured. I mean, this wouldn't be structured. There's not in my word structured, because there's no, so structured would be like the set pieces and the phases where where people are going to be, so you can predict what's going to happen. I mean, in a 3v3, it would be, in my view, and I may well be wrong, it would be quite dynamic, and especially if you can move between pitches, then one of these pitches might end up being a 6v6, and there might be a 2v2 and you just don't know. It depends how people react to that. So I mean, it's I guess it depends what we mean by structure. This is something we need to think about. So less in football, but I work in rugby, and the reality of rugby is it's only about 20 to 25% structured. However, most people's training is about 70 to 80% structured. So work back from the game.
Yeah, and I apologize. I guess it's not Ian Bainbridge. So Ian, you're off the hook there.
No idea which Ian that is.
What's that?
No idea which Ian that is. There's too many of us.
No idea. I have no idea, but it's fine. He's critical. It's okay. But no, I guess I just threw this up there because I was thinking about an activity the other day. If I were to go back out, and this for me is an activity that 9-year-olds can do to college players can do. And anybody can do this. And so now we're starting to get questions, which is great. Neil Hull, I tooted, by the way, Neil, I don't know if you got on time, but I tooted your horn. I know you like recognition and all that. So Neil, I just want to let you know that I did toot your horn and say you were amazing. And you were the driving force behind this, behind me getting this done. But he says, can you introduce where the coach has a superpower? And he or she can score when players perform certain roles.
Well, once again, I step onto something and someone comes up with new stuff. Of course you could. And actually, something I've been trying to gamify is coach development. So I work with coaches, and actually how many pauses do you think you want today? So if they have 4 pauses or 5, then they come to me. But I would often, I mean, I think it's a great word to use around coaches. So I just had a coach yesterday, and someone gave me some feedback on him, and I said, and I messaged him. I said, look, I've had some feedback. Would you want it? And it was pretty tough feedback. And I said, look, I think your superpower is this, but overused it becomes this. So I would use that word a lot. So what a great suggestion. I think as in your co-coaching groups, you could start to talk about, so today, Vince, your superpower is you are skills master. So I want, let's see if the kids can guess what your superpower was today.
Yeah,
no, it's fantastic. Coach Barker, do you have any? Because I think you have
one quick observation, then a question for Rusty. So I see the teaching games for understanding in here too, the ability to manipulate environments to accelerate the learning process. So we had a TGFU guy on the other day that was really interesting, and obviously that's a little bit more well known because it's been around a bit longer, but I think this really is like a super extension on top of it. My quick question, Rusty, with video games, iPhones, you buy the app, the kids play to a certain level, then there's an in-app purchase, and to get to that next level, you get through the first 3, and then all of a sudden you got to pay $100 to get to number 4 because it's is it chicken and the egg? What do you think came first? Do you think gamification was something we all understood and the app developers sort of took it on board, or do you think part of our interest in gamification is a response to the digital world?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I actually was doing this in 2006, and I don't know if any of you are as old as me, and you remember the TV program Going for Gold? The heat is on, the time is right. So you look at all the stuff like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You get to choose to bank. There's different levels. So I think it's been going on. It's part of what kind of captures us, and also how we learn. And same in school, you work your way through levels of stuff. And so, I think the reality is that you look at Vitality over here, the fitness app, it's gamifying your health. So you get health discounts if you achieve certain levels. And so, I think it's and I think it's also about mastery. I wouldn't even necessarily have an end level. I would, we might not have a boss level. We might always be like thinking about, well, what could the next level be? Mm-hmm. One of the challenges, I guess, with all of this is that, and you'd have had it with your TGFU conversation, is it probably takes some slightly different coaching skills. So your ability to notice and have individual interactions. And I might still in this session see little Johnny struggling and go, Johnny, do you want to come and do a couple of reps with me? Or Vince's superpower is skill. Ideally, I would let them choose a way of coming out. I did a session at Arsenal Ladies, and they played a game. It was a bigger game with goals. When you scored a goal, you went to the bonus level. I mean, these were grown-ups. You went to the bonus level. They were so into it. And then you chose. So I might be playing your team, Vince, and I go, right, I'm taking 3 from mine and 2 from yours. And at that stage, it's worth a 1-point goal. It might be worth a 2-point goal if we went 3-3. But I then have to make a decision over, well, we're underloaded on the other pitch, so we'll just retain the ball on the big pitch while the little pitch scores as goals. And that would allow some micro coaching. So I think it requires a slightly different skill set. And I'm sure they spoke about it with TGFU. But for me, the area coaches need to think much more intentionally about is, what am I going to notice? Where is my attention going to be? Am I going to look? And most coaches in England are just looking at the ball. I would be spending much more time looking off the ball, and I would be looking at where other people are scanning and are they sharing information. So if I've noticed Vince has solved the problem, but then he hasn't told anyone, I might go over, Vince, what have you seen? Okay, cool. Vince, do you think it would be useful to pause the game now? Do you want to pause it? Yeah. So that's where the skill of the coach is like, it's tough. And I'm learning, and kind of my last story on it, I did do a session a few months ago at ACS Cobham, and one kid came up to me afterwards and he went, Rusty, can I give you some feedback? And I'm like, yeah, thinking I've smashed it. He was like, that's the worst session I've ever done. Let me tell you why. My dad, military, does everything for me, never had to make decisions. This was too much of a stretch. So good feedback for me. I'm often doing one-off sessions. So I'm kind of verbalizing an excuse here. I should have spent more time noticing at the start, the people that were going to struggle. And if I'm honest, my bias is that I spend more times with the kids. I would want to hang out with Messi and Beckham and people like that. And I need to get better at the other kids. That's why I created that co-coaching card.
Yep. No, I want to provide people your website too. So it's themagicacademy.co.uk.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, it's got, we do cards on there. We do some gamification cards. We do some coach development cards. My email address is easy. It's Rusty, RUSTY, at themagicacademy.co.uk. People want to reach out. I think I sent that session to you, Vince. I've got a session with me GoPro'd up doing it in rugby. Apologies in Canada. I'm happy to touch base with people on it. And it's, I mean, look, it's interestingly on handball, I said to one of the coaches who's tried it, what did you notice? And I thought he was going to speak about the players, and he did. He said, they were really engaged. They were really conversational. They saw it. He said, but you know what? Really re-energized my coaching. It's really changed. I was starting to get into a bit of a slump, Rusty, and I actually started to feel better about my coaching. And I was like, whoa, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's a huge impact. One last question, and we've taken way too much of your time, and
that's cool, mate. I'm good.
But Chris has asked, how did you start implementing gamification and video game design into your sessions? So, and then how many sessions would you incorporate this into? So
it's a great question, Chris. And so I would incorporate it into lots of stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily do everything. How did I first start doing it? I'll be honest with you. We were just about to do we do every year a schools tour of the UK. We do 15 locations, loads of schools come. And so we were like, we've kind of got some ideas, so we shared the principles. So we said, look, here's the principles. We got all the teachers into little groups. We got them to design games, and we stole them all. So we actually got them to partake and explain how it felt. And we just played around. So the iteration you've seen there, and the whiteboards for me gave me a real quick way of explaining it. Cool. Here's a whiteboard. Both teams. You got 2 minutes. Come and find me if you've got any questions. Type stuff. Because that's the bit that often takes time, especially when I'm doing a one-off. I'm thinking, this is taking. I almost have to go. I'm really sorry. This is taking a long time to explain. It wouldn't normally be like this. But I think if you're constantly with a team, you might be able to go, well, do you want to play the Boston game or the Massachusetts game? And which level do you, or do you want to play the Brazil game? So you might have a Brazil game that's based around elimination, beating people. And you might go, do you want to start level 3 or level 4? Now, level 3 might be, we play the Brazilian game in silence. Level 4 might be that you can only beat someone on your non-dominant foot. I don't know, whatever you feel it is. And for me, this is also, so last football story, apologies if you've heard this. So Mike Beale is the Rangers coach. So I was doing a day at Rangers, and I was chatting to Mike, and I said, look, why didn't you make it as a player? And he said, because at 18, my left foot was 18 and my right foot was 3. And I think it's a beautiful way of putting. I wasn't very good at passing on my right-hand side. I think it's a great question to ask kids. But this game allows you to develop skill. So if I'm playing a game with Mike, so the reason Mike isn't that good on his right-hand side, I think is a coaching problem, because if you're in an academy and you don't want to risk not getting a contract, you don't go and play on the right-hand side of the pitch unless someone goes, look, Mike, we're gonna try some stuff here, and actually you're going to get more points if you do a pass with your right foot. You're still going to get rewarded for your left, but it's going to be worth more with your right, and this is how you can help your team build points. Then he would be a better player, quite frankly.
Yeah. No, I think this has all been fantastic, and the comments have been very, very positive, by the way. And by the way, the Ian that was referenced is our good friend Ian Mulliner. Rusty.
Sorry, Ian. Sorry, mate.
No. He just the way he is. But anyway, he'll be on, by the way, at 4:00 Eastern time. If you want to jump in, Rusty, you're more than welcome to jump in and come with us on TGIF. But no.
Send me a link. Send me a link.
I will. Awesome.
I'll see if I'm awake.
All right. I'll send it to you. But thank you all so much for being on. Ian, any last comments or anything before we let Rusty go?
No, Rusty, very generous with your time and with your insights. So thank you very much.
No, it's
Thank
a pleasure.
you.
Thank you, guys. Keep rocking it.
Yeah, for those that want the slide deck, email me at vgansberg, at unitedsoccercoaches.org. I'll put it in the box there. Email me, and I'm more than happy to share. And hopefully, Rusty, we can get you to California, because I think if you did a classroom session and a field session, this would be absolutely wonderful for our audience at the convention. So
yeah,
hopefully we can do that and get you to California. So
absolutely.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Stay safe, everyone. Thank
you, Rusty.
Thank you. And everybody, hopefully we'll see some of you at 4 o'clock with the man who needs no introduction, Ian Mulliner, and maybe Rusty. So we'll see. But thank you all so much for your time, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Be safe.
Be safe.
Thanks, Rusty.